My fiancée, Willow, came to pick me up from work, but when I opened the car door, I froze in place. In the passenger seat, which should have been exclusively mine, there was a drunken man lying at an awkward angle. The car's stereo automatically connected to Bluetooth, playing an unfamiliar English song, soft and intimate. The Bluetooth device name clearly displayed on the screen, Makotini's iPhone. Makotini, such an intimate way of calling. However, Willow showed no hint of guilt, only calmly saying, "Oh, that's Makoto, my colleague. He drank too much and isn't feeling well. He's just a colleague, you know. Please be understanding and don't overthink it." Her tone was as flat as if she were commenting on the weather. Then, in a tone that seemed entirely natural, she ordered me, "Sit in the back today. I need to take him home first." I looked at her, then suddenly smiled, and clearly said just one word, "Okay." Afterward, I turned decisively and walked away without a trace of hesitation. I texted her to break up, then blocked all of her contact information. With the calmest tone, I gave her the most unforgettable, clean breakup, no drama, no strings attached. Chapter 1. Just because of this, my friend David's voice was full of disbelief as he snuffed out the cigarette between his fingers, the red ember vanishing in the night. He looked at me in confusion, like I was some unreasonable man. "You and Willow have been together for 3 years. This year, you were about to get married, and for something so trivial." I met his probing gaze and nodded calmly, my voice steady and calm. "Yeah, just because of this." To everyone, Willow was the epitome of perfection. She was a business manager with an annual salary in the millions. Beautiful, gentle, tall, graceful, no sign of the spoiled, high-maintenance behavior of a rich girl. When she stood by my side, everyone said we were made for each other. Even David had said more than once that I must have done something good in my past life to end up with a gem like Willow. Our relationship was once the purest sanctuary in my heart. It was just the two of us there. No room for any impurities, not even a speck of dust. Yet this relationship, which everyone envied, ended with me calling it quits just because she took a drunk male colleague home. It certainly sounded ridiculous. David's confusion in his eyes hit a nerve in me. He didn't know that just 3 hours ago, my world had been turned upside down. That day, Willow said she was done with her social gathering and would pick me up from work. As usual, I pulled open the passenger door, tired but happy, but instead of her gentle smile, I was greeted by the strong smell of alcohol, mixed with an unfamiliar men's cologne, which immediately overwhelmed me. In what should have been my seat, a stranger was drunkenly slumped over, completely out of it, like a pile of mush. He seemed to sense the light from the door and sluggishly opened his eyes, flashing me a crooked grin. "Utterly drunk, George." He mumbled my name, and the next second, as if he were too hot, he roughly tugged at his tie. At that moment, my breath caught in my throat. That tie, I knew it all too well. It was the silk tie Willow had given me for my birthday last month, in iris blue. Now, it was loosely hanging around another man's neck. How could my tie be on him? Unless she had given an identical one to Makoto. I stood frozen, feeling as though my blood was freezing inch by inch. Willow, sitting in the driver's seat, finally pulled her gaze from the rearview mirror and looked at me. Her face held no sign of guilt, not even a hint of flustered explanation. "Oh, this is Makoto, my colleague. He drank too much and isn't feeling well. As a colleague, it's only right that I take care of him." Her tone was as flat as if she were saying, "The weather's nice today." Then, in an entirely natural tone, she ordered me, "Sit in the back today. I need to take him home first." That expression, so natural, made me momentarily question if the fault was mine. But when I looked at the tie on the man's neck, I just felt the deepest sense of irony. We'd been together too long, so long that she had forgotten my most hated thing in the world, people and situations without boundaries. That tie that belonged to me, that seat that should have been mine, that man she was protecting as though it was her duty. Everything felt like a sticky mess, blinding my eyes and tainting my heart. Just then, a jarring tune suddenly blared from the car, without warning. On the screen, the Bluetooth name boldly flashed, Makoto's iPhone. The space that once belonged to us was now playing another man's playlist. The nerve of it, stepping into what was once ours, made me feel more disgusted than the tie around his neck. The last bit of warmth in my heart was completely extinguished by that music. Willow finally noticed my silence, and a trace of impatience crept into her voice. "What are you still standing there for? Get in the car." I suddenly laughed. There was no warmth in that laugh. I looked at her and clearly uttered just one word, "Okay." After that, I turned resolutely and walked away without a second glance. I texted her to break up, then blocked all of her contact information. When I got back to the house we shared, I began packing my things. I scooped up the orange cat we had raised together. It seemed to sense the heavy atmosphere and whimpered anxiously in my arms. 3 years of time had left traces in every corner of this house. I once thought these were proof of my happiness, but now, they felt more like a giant tomb, burying the love I once had. I wanted so badly to be carefree, to take everything in just one suitcase and leave cleanly. But the reality was, the things that belonged to me were so many that I'd need a truck to carry them all. Just as I was packing the last of my things into a cardboard box in the study, the door lock was violently turned open with a key. Willow stormed in. She was running frantically, her hair messy, her chest heaving, her beautiful face flushed with sweat from her hurried run, and her expression full of indignation as she confronted me. "What are you even doing? Do you really want to push this all the way to breaking up?" The moment she spoke, it was as if all the problems were suddenly my fault. I returned her question word for word. "And what about you? What are you so impatient about?" My calm response seemed to have completely enraged her. "Just because I took care of a drunk male colleague. He was drunk from his business meeting. I was just taking him home. Isn't that normal? George, you've been drunk from work events too. You're both men. Can't you show a little understanding?" She shouted in frustration, snatching the box from my hands and slamming it to the floor. The next second, she grabbed me from behind, holding me tightly as hot tears soaked into my back. Her rough action startled the orange cat in my arms, causing it to screech in panic. I looked at her coldly, taking a subtle step back, moving away from her grasp. That step felt like a barrier, completely separating me from her. I felt nothing but absurdity in my heart. How many faces did this woman have? In the car, she was high and mighty, but now she was pretending to be the abandoned, heartbroken woman, just because of that line. Isn't this normal? I'm done. I'm calling it off. My voice was calm, devoid of any emotion, but it cut through the tension like an ice-cold blade. Willow's expression went blank in an instant, and her beautiful eyes, once full of self-righteousness, now showed a flicker of real panic. She knew I never joked about breaking up, but the next second, she tried to shift the moral burden back onto me. "George, we're about to get married. As a man, don't you think it's petty to make a fuss over something so small?" I almost laughed at her words. "We're not even married yet," I replied nonchalantly, shattering her hypocritical questions. She flushed red with rage, completely losing control of her emotions. She suddenly reached out, trying to grab my arm. I held the cat in my arms and stepped back, avoiding her touch, like I was avoiding something filthy. Before she could descend into another hysterical outburst, I spoke the final words. "Calm down for the night. I'm not staying here tonight." With that, I turned, holding the trembling little one in my arms, and walked toward the door without looking back. I locked all her breakdowns and unwillingness behind the door. Chapter 2. It wasn't until I rushed out of that suffocating house that I realized, too late, that most hotels don't allow pets. Out of sheer frustration, I had no choice but to call my friend David. When the door opened, David froze in place as he saw the cat carrier in my hand and me standing there, a mess on his doorstep. Under the lights, there were two people, one cat. We stared at each other, the silence thick in the air. It was David who broke the strange silence first. He stepped aside to let me in, his confused gaze practically written on his face. "So, why are you bringing the cat along?" He paused for a moment, as if organizing his words, and then asked the most direct question. "Are you afraid she would be crazy enough to hurt it?" I didn't answer, only looking down to soothe the restless little one inside the cat carrier. To be honest, when I decided to get the cat, I had already mentally rehearsed this breakup scene. I had even thought it through. If that day ever came, this cat had to, and could only, go with me. So from the beginning, I was the one cleaning its litter, buying its food, and taking care of everything. This little life had been picked up by me from the street, and I was the one who brought it into that house. No one, except me, would ever lay a finger on it. David once joked that if Willow found out about this, she would probably get furious. I didn't expect his words to be so prophetic. He poured me a cup of hot water, his brow still furrowed, clearly unable to understand, and said, "So, you're breaking up with her over this small thing." In his view, a breakup should come after a buildup of disappointment, a broken heart, and a quiet, unnoticed goodbye. But for me, it wasn't like that. My decision was sharp, like an unexpected storm. I pulled at the corner of my mouth and gave a sarcastic smile. Why should I? Why should I force myself to wait for disappointment to pile up before leaving? And why should I keep giving her the chance to hurt me over and over again? I raised my eyes, my gaze as cold as ice. As soon as I sense anything wrong, I'll immediately pull away, without a second thought. In my eyes, this isn't a small thing. It's a test, a blatant test of obedience. If I let it slide this time, there will definitely be a next time, and the time after that, she'll only get worse, more excessive, and more shameless. I can't lower my boundaries again and again for anyone. My words turned the confusion in David's eyes into clear discomfort and heartache. He furrowed his brow, his voice strained. "What about the 3 years you spent together? 3 years, and you're willing to let go just like that? Just like that? Giving up completely? That's a huge sunk cost." I didn't say anything more. All the proof of love now felt like knives stabbing into my chest. David sighed deeply, and then placed a hand on my shoulder. I hope you don't regret this. I still want to advise you to think it over one more time. Chapter 3. The next day, I didn't call for a big truck. The whole setup would have been too much, as if there was still some room left. I only called for 2 small trucks to park downstairs. Moving out felt more like reclaiming what rightfully belonged to me. Willow didn't go to work. She sat gracefully at the dining table, elegantly eating her breakfast. Meanwhile, in the kitchen that once belonged to us, a tall and upright figure was tying on an apron, busily moving around. It was Makoto, her male colleague. When she saw me enter, a spark of light flashed in Willow's eyes, but that light only lasted a second before being swiftly replaced by her usual arrogance and aloofness. She slightly raised her chin, casting a look at me as though offering a charitable glance, followed by a disdainful sniff through her nose. "Realized your mistake and came back to beg me," she said. "George, I'll tell you this, if you don't properly apologize to me this time, I'm absolutely not going to forgive you." She even raised her hand and pointed toward the kitchen, her tone carrying a hint of bragging. "You have no idea. Makoto even came over early this morning to explain everything to you, just to avoid any misunderstandings." As soon as her words finished, Makoto walked out of the kitchen, carrying a plate of delicate sandwiches. He wore my spare apron, and his simple white shirt gave off a fresh and clean vibe. The cuffs were casually rolled up to his forearms, revealing his thick wrists. Every movement he made carried an air of self-assurance, as if he were the man of the house. He even flashed me a gentle smile. "Sorry, George, I didn't mean to make you misunderstand." His voice was neither loud nor soft, but it clearly reached my ears, every word coated with a layer of false sincerity. "Yesterday, I had too much to drink while socializing. Willow here kindly took care of me, and she had nothing but good intentions. You really shouldn't be mad at her because of this." He placed the sandwich in front of Willow, then thoughtfully turned around to serve her a bowl of warm porridge. "I made extra sandwiches, so why don't you sit down and have some too?" As he handed her the bowl, his wrist subtly turned. A glaring red burn mark was perfectly exposed in front of Willow. Willow's brows immediately furrowed in concern, and she asked, "How could you be so careless?" Makoto smiled awkwardly, shaking his head, his voice slightly hoarse with a touch of grievance. "It's nothing. It doesn't hurt anymore. Are you an idiot?" Willow scolded playfully, grabbing his wrist and gently holding it in her hands. She lowered her head, softly blowing on the burn mark. "Look at this. It's so red. How could it not hurt?" The scene was intimate, like a painting, yet glaring, like a knife to my heart. After blowing on the burn, she didn't let go of his wrist, but rather, looked up at me defiantly and gave a command. "George, what are you standing there for? Go get the burn ointment." Makoto's face flushed at that moment, even his ears turning bright red, as if he was embarrassed, or perhaps feeling a sense of triumph. I watched this absurd and ridiculous scene unfold before me, watching their intimate performance, full of affection. A wave of laughter, born from intense anger, suddenly surged from deep within my chest. If, before this morning, I still held a tiny, ridiculous glimmer of affection for these 3 years together, now, that last ember had been completely extinguished in the absurdity of this farce. A cold curve tugged at the corner of my lips as I asked, "Did you break your hand? Can't you get it yourself?" My voice, sharp and venomous, sliced through the intimate atmosphere between them. I bypassed their frozen figures and walked straight into what used to be our bedroom. My suitcase had been packed long ago. At this moment, I was simply clearing out the last few things that still belonged to me, one by one, item by item. The things she gave me, the things I bought, all the items that carried shared memories. I threw them into black garbage bags without any hesitation. For the things I couldn't take, like the desk I assembled myself, I took a picture and sent it to the old lady downstairs who collected scrap. I asked her to come up whenever she had the time to take it away. I wanted to erase every trace of my existence from this room. Willow, with a pale face, could no longer hold back. She stormed in, her voice sharp and malicious. "George, can you stop being such a coward? Who else would be so petty like you? Makoto already explained everything to you. Why can't you just accept it?" She seemed to think her questions weren't enough, taking a step forward and glaring at me with those beautiful eyes, as if she were trying to dissect me with them. "Are you really going to give up on the 3 years we spent together?" Her tone carried a high-handed certainty, almost as if she were issuing me a final ultimatum. "I'm telling you now, once you walk out that door, you'll never find a better woman than me." Seeing that I remained unmoved, she finally began to soften, panic creeping into her voice, barely detectable. "While there's still time, you can put your things down, and I'll pretend nothing happened." I stopped what I was doing and slowly turned around. "Are you sure you want to say that again?" My gaze slowly moved from her face, filled with anger and grievance, to Makoto, who had been silently watching from the doorway, his face carrying a hint of smugness and jealousy. I smiled. I spoke slowly, each word crystal clear. If you keep talking, I'm afraid your dear colleague here might end up truly wronged. The blood drained from Willow's face in an instant, leaving her frozen in place. Then, as if someone had stepped on her tail, she explained angrily, I told you, he's just a colleague. Why do you keep holding on to this? I tugged at the corner of my mouth, a mocking smile curling on my lips. I can't do what you do. I can't spend the night taking care of a drunk female colleague while I have a girlfriend. And I certainly can't be so considerate as to connect her Bluetooth and play her favorite songs. Oh, and by the way, I said, feigning sudden realization, I also wouldn't take off my coat to cover her, afraid she might catch a cold. My gaze slowly swept across her pale face, finally landing on Makoto's innocent expression, the one he was putting on so poorly. I'm afraid I can't learn your advanced methods of avoiding suspicion. Letting your male colleague into your home, tying on my apron, making a fake breakfast, then performing a heartfelt, tear-jerking burn care act. I had said everything that needed to be said. I zipped up my suitcase, and the sound of it closing severed the last connection between us. I took one last look at Willow. She just stood there, staring at me, her brows furrowed tightly, her eyes red and swollen. But even in this state, her face was still beautiful, strikingly vibrant. I couldn't deny it. 3 years ago, it was that face that had deceived me. But now, no matter how beautiful the face, it couldn't hide the decay inside. The last bit of melancholy in my heart was forced down. I waved at her, my tone colder than ever. Let's just leave it at that. Willow, let's never meet again. The moment my words fell, her beautiful face twisted beyond recognition. She almost spat my name through clenched teeth. George. You remember this. The moment you walk out that door, don't even think about coming back one day, crying and begging me. Willow, will never look back. Chapter 4. Half an hour after I blocked all of her contact information, Willow updated her status. Next one will be better and more obedient. I never want to date a cold-blooded man again. The picture was a tearful selfie of hers, eyes red and pitiful. Soon, some mutual friends commented, asking what had happened. She replied instantly, her words full of innocence and grievance. I was suddenly dumped for no reason. It was David who sent me the screenshot. He cautiously asked if I was okay. I didn't respond with my feelings, just calmly telling him that Willow had invited her male colleague to our home. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a full half-minute. Then, David's angry tirade exploded like a barrage of gunfire. Is she okay? Did her brain get stuck in the door? Is she that clueless? She rushed to take care of a drunk male colleague, and now she's turning around and calling you a cold-hearted man. Why doesn't she tell her friends that she brought her male colleague home in broad daylight? And taking care of a drunk colleague, I bet she took him to bed. David was still ranting, his phone's keyboard clicking loudly, clearly heading straight to Willow's WeChat post to confront her. Sure enough, not long after, her carefully crafted post disappeared without a trace. He seemed unsatisfied, vowing to go into their mutual friend group and give her a piece of his mind. But I stopped him just in time. Enough, David. My voice carried a hint of exhaustion. Even without Makoto, Willow and I wouldn't have made it to the end. There had already been an insurmountable divide between Willow and me. She was a princess, adored by everyone, with wealthy business parents, an only child raised with a silver spoon. And me. My parents were just ordinary working-class people, struggling to make a living. They worked tirelessly all their lives but often failed to see things clearly, always picking up other people's messes, only to end up overwhelmed, leaving me to clean up the mess. They saw me as their only hope, their pride. That heavy expectation weighed on me like an invisible mountain, nearly suffocating me. Fortunately, I did my best, studying relentlessly and making it into the best high school in the city. On the day I filled out my college applications, I didn't hesitate at all. I chose the farthest city, turning my back on the suffocating home and leaving without looking back. In truth, even without Makoto, Willow and I wouldn't have made it to the end. That divide was her innate sense of superiority. It wasn't visible every day, but every time I tried to get closer, it was ruthlessly pushed away. We went to see a movie once. I habitually opened an app and scrolled through the endless coupons to find the best deal. That was a lifestyle ingrained in me. But she just stood by, furrowing her brow with a look of subtle disdain in her eyes, as if my few dollars worth of careful planning had tainted the sanctity of the date. She said, George, there's no need to be so petty. Petty. That word was like a cold needle piercing my heart. Another time, we were at the supermarket. I habitually compared prices and weights of different brands on the shelves, calculating which offered the best value. She, however, was already growing impatient, arms crossed, leaning against the shelf, her beautiful face showing clear boredom. To her, the time I spent comparing a few dollars difference seemed meaningless. But she didn't understand, it wasn't just a few dollars. It was the money I painstakingly saved, planning for our future. She had even suggested more than once that I quit my job and help out at her company. She said, That way, we could be together all the time. I listened to her casual tone, and an icy chill ran through me. Be together all the time. That's just like being a caged canary. If it were a man, they'd call him a kept man. But she forgot that everything I had now was earned through my own hard work. This job, which wasn't exceptional, was one I fought for and secured in the job market. Why should I? Why should I give up the sky I depend on just for her so-called love? I'll never forget the first time I visited her home. That bone-deep, inescapable feeling of shame still suffocates me whenever I think of it. The crystal chandelier in her living room was brighter than all the lights in my rented apartment combined. Her parents sat on an expensive European-style sofa, scrutinizing me with their sharp eyes, examining me from head to toe. Their gaze was no different from the way people pick a cabbage at a market. They weighed me, looked at my value, then estimated what a poor boy like me was really worth. Between us, there was already a vast, uncrossable chasm. Neither of us was willing to take a step toward the other. So, Makoto's appearance was never a surprise. He was more like a stone, perfectly placed right into the deepest crack between us. That was all. Chapter 5. To help me heal, David dragged me into a bar called Nightshade. The deafening music nearly shook my soul out of this weary body. On stage, a live house band was whipping up an auditory storm. The lead singer was a girl, wild and flamboyant, her voice smoky and raw. Soaring freely, she commanded everyone's emotions, leading them to sink and revel in the kingdom of rock. David said this kind of place could help people temporarily forget their troubles, but he didn't know. My troubles couldn't be drowned out by noise. They had already taken root deep in my heart. After the song ended, as we sat down, the girl, guitar slung over her back, walked straight toward us. Off stage, she shed the queenly aura and took on a more youthful, radiant look. Her eyes, like they were filled with the stars of the entire night, shone astonishingly bright. Then, her scorching gaze landed directly on me. She stopped in front of me and boldly pushed her phone screen toward me. "Hey, handsome, can I get your WeChat?" After she left, David's gaze lingered on her retreating figure. He nudged me with his elbow, lowering his voice. "Wow, George, that girl looks like she's from a girl group, and she's the lead singer. Pretty wild." Huh. She did seem young, maybe even a college student. When she spoke, her two little sharp canine teeth would show, making her already vibrant face seem even livelier. A fresh, youthful energy radiated from her. I shook my head, picking up my drink. The amber liquid swirled in the glass, failing to reflect my expression. I don't want to talk to anyone right now. That feeling of emotional exhaustion, I didn't want to go through it again. Then why'd you give her your WeChat? David said, clearly enjoying the drama. I didn't answer right away. My gaze drifted past the noisy crowd, landing on a booth not far away. Because her audience isn't me, I gestured for David to look over there. A group of men and women, about the same age as the lead singer, were sitting there. From the moment she returned, she appeared to be chatting with everyone, but her eyes were always locked on one particular fair, scholarly-looking man. All her enthusiasm and initiative were just a performance for him. The bitterness behind her attempt to seem casual was all too clear to me. Sure enough, not long after I left the bar, my phone lit up. It was her message. "Hey, sorry, I used you to make the guy I like jealous. I don't want to play those flirtation games anymore." I stared at the two messages, my face expressionless. My finger lightly slid across the screen and tapped the red delete button. No reply, not even a ripple of emotion. Another drama that had nothing to do with me. I couldn't even muster the interest to be a spectator. On the 8th day after the breakup, Willow staged a carefully orchestrated performance on her WeChat. David's WeChat popped up, full of unfiltered schadenfreude. "Dude, go check out the big show." Immediately, he sent a screenshot. The background of the photo showed two figures in a hotel, nestled closely together, clearly intimate. It was Willow and Makoto. No caption, but it spoke louder than words. David's voice message followed, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. Unbelievable. She even set it to only me visible. I asked around. None of her friends have seen it. She must have known I'd tell you. She's deliberately putting on a show for you. You think she's still dreaming that you're gonna be heartbroken and begging her to come back? I looked at the photo, feeling no emotion inside, and even found it a bit laughable. Just then, a red one appeared at the top of my phone screen. It was a friend request. From the profile picture I had already deleted. The note read cautiously, "Look at the cat." I moved my finger and tapped ignore. The world was quiet for only a few minutes before that red one stubbornly appeared again. This time, the note had a tone of self-righteous questioning. "The cat is ours. We raised it together. There's no reason for you to stop me from even looking at it after the breakup. Right? Raised together." A cold sneer curled on my lips. Fortunately, I had already anticipated this day would come. I opened my photo album and began sending the carefully prepared screenshots. One by one, the payment record for cat food, The order details for the cat litter, the receipts for the vet bills. Each one clearly showed the payer, George. Each one. Like a silent slap to her face. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a full minute. Then, her messages came pouring in like a dam breaking. George, you've already changed your heart, haven't you? You don't love me anymore, do you? Why else would you keep these records? Just to cut ties with me completely. You have no heart. Her questioning shifted from anger to tearful pleading. Answer the phone. I want to hear your voice. I miss you. Please. Can you take me off your blacklist? I looked at the messages flooding my screen and felt a wave of irritation rise from deep within me. I frowned, clicking my tongue softly. So annoying. Chapter 6. Walking back into the Nightshade bar. The air was thick with the scent of alcohol and restless energy, almost suffocating. Amidst the deafening music, the lead singer's figure appeared in my line of sight again. She seemed to be a regular here, but tonight, she wasn't performing. She and a group of friends pushed through the crowd, her punk-style black jacket standing out under the dim, hazy lights, bold and attention-grabbing. She casually spoke to her friends, a carefree smile playing on her lips. In an instant, our eyes met, and I couldn't avoid it. Without expression, I shifted my gaze, focusing on the empty microphone stand on stage, as if the eye contact had been nothing more than an illusion. But from the corner of my eye, I could clearly feel her gaze lingering on me for a long while, almost as though she was studying me. In the end, we were from completely different worlds. Damn, George, look at that jacket. It's the latest model, probably over 60,000 yuan. David gasped in my ear, his eyes wide like saucers. And that guitarist's new gear, worth over 100,000. He clicked his tongue in amazement, then seemed to remember something and lifted his phone to take a disheveled selfie, posting it with the caption, "This world won't change just because there's one more rich person in it." I watched his childish behavior, my lips barely twitching. Yeah, what difference does it make? If your heart is barren, no amount of material possessions can fill it. We hadn't been sitting long when a shy-looking girl, her ears flushed red, approached us, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, can I add you on WeChat?" A suppressed burst of laughter came from her table behind her. Another round of boring games. I nodded, unlocked my screen, the process smooth and swift, like a pre-programmed routine. The girl eagerly scanned the code, blushing, and hurried away. This time, I didn't even wait to leave the bar. With a light tap on the screen, the freshly lit avatar was sent straight into my blacklist. As I stood to leave, I passed by the lead singer's table. A clear, mocking laugh hit my ears. Laughable. That guy looks so innocent. Sophia asked him for his WeChat to annoy Martin last time. And now, this adventure game lost. And another woman's asking him for his WeChat. What a sucker. Another voice chimed in, dripping with disdain. It's just a bit of fun. No need to take it seriously. I didn't stop. Walking through the noisy crowd, the cold wind outside the bar blew away the last remnants of drunkenness. David had already been called away by a few friends, shouting about heading to the next venue. I waved them off, standing alone at the street corner in the middle of the night, waiting for a cab. The surrounding noise faded instantly, and the world seemed to narrow down to just me. On the cold, late-night street corner, the chill was like a knife. A glaring crimson Maserati smoothly came to a stop in front of me. The familiar sleek body made me instinctively furrow my brows and turn, wanting to leave immediately, not wanting to stay for another second. The car door slammed open, and the sound of high heels hitting the ground echoed urgently. "George." That voice I had long grown tired of sounded behind me, and the next second, my arm was grabbed tightly by a force. "We need to talk." Willow, whom I hadn't seen in days, had immaculate makeup, but her eyes were filled with stubborn desperation as she forcibly kept me in place. I tried to pull away, the muscles in my arm tightening. My voice was cold, devoid of warmth. "Let go. I don't have a habit of chatting with exes. Let go, or I'll call the police." My warning was useless. She grabbed harder, her nails almost digging into my skin, her cold eyes furrowed in a deep frown, filled with intense unwillingness. Suddenly, Willow yanked open the car door, trying to use force to shove me inside. "Get in the car. I'll take you home." I stumbled back as she pushed me, and my frustration exploded. "How do you know I'm here? Are you following me?" Her gaze flickered for a moment, her lips pressed tight, an unnatural expression flashing across her face. I saw it on David's WeChat story. I clenched my teeth. David, that damned pig teammate, had really screwed me over. Seeing that I wasn't going to budge, she suddenly softened her tone, a trace of pleading creeping into her voice. "Just think of it as me missing the cat. Okay, take me to see the cat." The cat, again. She was surprisingly strong, nearly forcing me into the car. At that moment, a hand suddenly reached out from the side, slender, with clear knuckles and an unyielding strength, grabbing Willow's wrist and prying it off me. Willow's movement froze, Taking advantage of her momentary shock, the owner of the hand effortlessly pulled me behind her. A lazy voice, tinged with a hint of playful amusement, rang out in front of me. "Sis, didn't you see? He doesn't want to go back with you." It was her, the girl who had first asked for my WeChat at the bar. Chapter 7. Willow's face darkened completely, and no amount of her exquisite makeup could conceal her anger. She jerked her arm away from the girl, glaring at her with murderous intent. "What do you think you are? Get lost. This is between me and my boyfriend. It's none of your business." The girl let out a light laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes, which were filled with evident mockery. "Boyfriend? Miss, don't you know that a forced relationship is never sweet? You don't understand that, do you? A graceful breakup, no interference, this is the basic decorum of a proper ex." Her slender back shielded me completely, blocking Willow's hysterical gaze. For a brief moment, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. The security guards had noticed the commotion and were already walking over briskly. Willow's face grew even darker. Her lips moved as if she was about to say something more cutting. I didn't give her the chance. A voice, colder than the night wind, slipped from my throat, cutting off all her attempts. "Willow." I said her name calmly, every word wrapped in frost, sharp and piercing. "We're done. The fact that we've reached this point says it all. We're not right for each other." I watched her face drain of color, my tone completely devoid of emotion. "Go now. Don't make me take away the last bit of dignity I'm trying to preserve for you." She froze in place, like a statue encased in ice. The surrounding noise seemed to fade away. After a long while, she finally squeezed out a few words from between clenched teeth, her voice hoarse. "I can't accept this." Of course, she couldn't accept it. She couldn't understand how 3 years of relationship could be so easily let go of with no hesitation, no lingering feelings. But I saw it clearly. It wasn't that she couldn't bear me, nor that she couldn't let go of the relationship. She just couldn't accept it. She couldn't accept that I was walking away so decisively, without any struggle, without the pain and despair she had expected. My clean break had completely ruined the one-man show she had prepared, her dramatic, how to win back the person who dumped you, performance. She desperately wanted to find some sign of sadness in me, some glimmer of regret in my eyes, any trace of emotion that would prove she had been wronged. But sadly, she found nothing. Willow's figure disappeared completely into the night, and the suffocating pressure that had been weighing me down faded with her. The air around me seemed to start flowing again, bringing with it the coolness of the evening breeze. I turned, stepping out from behind the girl's slender form. The street lamp's soft light illuminated her as she stood quietly before me. Her eyes, those eyes that had once been filled with mockery, now gazing at me steadily. My throat was dry. I cleared it before speaking. "Thank you." I thought for a moment and added, "You're the live singer at Nightshade, right? To show my appreciation, I'll cover your next gig." That was probably the most straightforward and cliché way I could think of to thank her. At my words, the girl let out a soft laugh, a fleeting brilliance in her eyes. She didn't speak but slowly took out her phone, opened a page, and gently waved it in front of me. The cold light from the screen illuminated her delicate chin and the chat page I knew all too well. And there, glaring at me, was that bright red exclamation mark. "If you really want to thank me," she said, her lips curling into a smile, her eyes gleaming with a playful glint, "then add me back in the chat box." The last message lay there, untouched, unread by me. "My name's Sophia." My fingers froze. I pulled out my phone, almost in a rush, and accepted the friend request I had previously rejected. To cover my awkwardness, I awkwardly asked, "Aren't you mad at the guy you like anymore?" Sophia raised an eyebrow, clearly interested in my question. "Oh, how do you know I was mad at him?" I guessed. That excuse sounded weak, even to me. She smiled, her eyes becoming crescent moons, lips red, teeth white. There was a real warmth in her smile. "Gigi's really smart." She suddenly called me by my nickname, her voice low and soft, like a feather brushing across my heart, making me feel a strange, pleasant itch. But this time, it's really not about him. Chapter 8. Since I re-added Sophia as a friend, her messages seemed to have legs, popping up on my phone every so often. She subtly probed into what kind of girls I liked, like a curious cat, gently scratching at my heart. The conversation would always somehow loop back to Willow. Her words dripped with disdain, almost spilling out of the screen. "Breakups reveal a person's true character. Your ex is really lacking in that department. George, you better not even think about getting back with her. If you go back to her, I'll be the first to look down on you." Then, like a concerned mother, she'd add, "Has she stopped bothering you lately? If you need help, just call me. I'm a pro at blocking people." This live singer really seemed to have nothing to do. Her little life snippets trickled into mine through our brief chats. "Today I practiced my new guitar, but I accidentally scratched my hand. But I'm super strong." I powered through and played the whole song. At the end of the message was a cat emoji with a small red flower and an expression of pride. I was sitting at my computer, struggling with a report, when, for no good reason, I found myself distracted. My fingers tapped the screen lightly, and I responded with a concerned emoji. "How's your hand?" Almost immediately, my screen lit up. She replied right away, "It's pretty serious, like a river of blood. George, could you come see me?" Her message was followed by a poor, teary-eyed cat emoji. I stared at those words for a long time. Logic told me it was work hours, but my heart, it skipped a beat at the thought of Willow. In the end, I typed a cold reply. "I can't, I'm at work." The other end of the conversation fell silent immediately. For a long time, no new messages came through. A strange pressure settled in my chest, as if something were gently pressing on me, making it hard to breathe. By the time I finished all my work, the sky had darkened, and I picked up my phone again. On the screen, a few unread messages lay quietly, all from her. I opened them. When I saw the photo in the chat, I almost spit out the tea I had just taken a sip of. Enlarged, the photo revealed a smooth, shiny thigh occupying my entire view, the lines flowing and beautiful, and that supposed injury, just a light, pink scratch. If she hadn't pointed it out with her delicate fingers, it would have been almost invisible. But wait, wasn't she supposed to have injured her hand? Why was it her leg? Under the photo was a complaint, dripping with faux sympathy. "It hurts so much." The message was followed by a teary-eyed cat emoji. My temples throbbed. This injury was probably about to heal on its own in a second. The implied meaning of the photo was far too obvious, like a stone thrown into a calm lake, sending ripples through the surface, and with it, a dangerous test. My finger hovered over the screen but never pressed down. I wasn't ready to break that balance just yet. At the bar, the dim lights flickered through my glass. David snatched my phone away and saw the photo that hadn't been deleted. His eyes lit up immediately. "Damn, George." He slapped his thigh as if he'd discovered a new continent. "This girl's bold. She's blatantly flirting with you." He clicked his tongue and couldn't tear his eyes away from the photo. "But seriously, those legs, they're perfect." His lecherous words snapped me out of my daze. I remembered that Willow had found me through his WeChat updates, lingering like a ghost. A surge of anger flared up in my chest. "You still have the nerve to say that?" I stared at him coldly. "It's been how long since I broke up with Willow? Why haven't you deleted her yet?" David didn't flinch at all. Instead, he winked at me and grinned like an idiot. "Hey, you don't get it. I love watching her struggle, wanting something she can't have. It's so satisfying." He shook his drink in the air, his voice dripping with mischievous delight. "Especially after the way she treated you. Watching her crack over you is just too fun." I looked at him, feeling like the whole situation was absurd. This kind of vengeful satisfaction, I couldn't relate to it at all. Chapter 9. Sophia's flirtations hung in front of me like a hook coated in honey, blatantly dangling in my face. I instinctively stepped back, unable to avoid it. Each greeting she sent was met with the coldest, most distant responses I could muster. A voice inside me screamed. Part of me worried she was just using me as a distraction when she was bored. The other part of me, deeply skeptical, didn't believe in genuine affection for no reason at all. David leaned against the wall, lazily watching me and saying that I was turning myself into a prisoner, getting stuck in my own mind. "Can't you just believe in fairy tales for once? Like, there really is such a thing as love at first sight, and the moment she saw you, she fell for you." His tone was teasing, full of mockery. I immediately rejected the idea, my voice as cold as ice. "No, I don't believe in that. Any closeness always hides an agenda, especially with someone like Sophia, beautiful, dazzling, born into wealth, like a rose carefully cultivated, surrounded by admirers who would kneel before her." My suspicion was confirmed the moment I saw Sophia again. The deafening music was nearly shaking the roof of the bar. Under the dim, seductive lights, a handsome, sunny man was clinging to her by the stage, his demeanor affectionate, yet forcefully assertive. She, on the other hand, had a look of clear disgust on her face as she tried to pull her hand away. Just as she was about to say something, her gaze met mine through the bustling crowd as I entered the bar. Our eyes locked. In that instant, it felt like everything around us was muted. A bright light suddenly ignited in her beautiful almond eyes. She lifted her slender finger and pointed directly at me. "My boyfriend is here." Her voice wasn't loud, but it hit my ears clearly. My mind went blank, and I instinctively turned to look behind me. There, only David stood, just as confused as I was. Seeing my bewildered expression, the man sneered, his disdain practically oozing from his eyes. "Sophia, are you kidding me? You're just picking some random guy here and calling him your boyfriend. Who do you think you're fooling?" Tisk. A light click of his tongue, laced with impatience. Sophia picked up a square gift box from the table, clicked her high heels, and walked straight toward me. Without saying a word, she shoved the cold box into my arms. The next second, I felt her warm, soft touch as she directly linked her arm with mine. Her sweet fragrance instantly enveloped me. Sophia tilted her head slightly, a proud, almost smug expression on her face as she spoke to the men. "Let me introduce you properly. My boyfriend, George." Her voice was clear, each word crisp and precise. When she finished, she subtly squeezed my fingers, a soft, almost inaudible whisper reaching my ear, the volume just enough for only the two of us to hear. "Do me a favor." Her tone was laced with an imperceptible plea, like a kitten's paw gently scratching at my heart. I immediately understood. The small irritation I had about being used evaporated with that soft, almost pleading voice. I turned my head, meeting the man's gaze, which was filled with jealousy and frustration. I curved my lips into a smile, polite but coldly distant. "Hello. Is there something I can help you with? Regarding my girlfriend?" The word girlfriend was barely a whisper, but it was clear and sharp, like a dull knife, non-lethal, but enough to sting. The man's eyes reddened in an instant, as though I had publicly exposed all his fragile pretenses. His voice trembled, filled with a desperate, almost frenzied madness. "I don't believe it. I've never heard of you, Sophia. You just picked some random guy to fool me, didn't you?" Sophia's delicate brows furrowed, the last trace of patience draining from her beautiful face. Her tone turned icy, colder than I expected. "Enough, Martin. Do you really want us to prove it to your face?" At her words, the man named Martin's face drained of color, the last trace of blood vanishing completely. He glared at me, his eyes burning with hatred, as though he wanted to pierce right through me. Then, in a flurry of embarrassment, he turned and forced his way through the noisy crowd, fleeing. The deafening music once again flooded my ears. I watched his disappearing back, then returned the cold gift box to Sophia. She had helped me once, and I had helped her once. We were even. But to my surprise, Sophia simply looked at me, showing no intention of reaching for the box. Her smooth lips parted slightly. "It's for you." I froze for a moment and lowered my gaze to open the gift box. Inside, resting quietly, was a watch, its subtle silver dial gleaming with a cold, expensive shine. It was clearly worth a lot. Sophia's pale earlobes had inexplicably turned a faint shade of pink. She glanced at me, but then, as if burned, quickly shifted her gaze away. She spoke softly. "Has anyone ever told you that your name suits you?" "George." She uttered my name, the trailing sound soft and light. "Traditional and reliable. Traditional and reliable." That phrase felt like a ridiculous joke. I couldn't help but laugh, though the laughter didn't reach my eyes. She probably didn't know I had a younger brother, Ethan, a name that symbolized strength, courage, and resilience. But behind that name, there was no beauty, no hopeful meaning, just endless darkness and mire. Gentle was another word someone had once used for me. Willow. But after we broke up, she'd told anyone who would listen that I, George, was just like my name, flashy, pretentious, and disgustingly fake. I suppressed all emotions, closed the gift box, and handed it back to her. "Thank you for the watch, but it's too expensive. I can't accept it. Consider today as me repaying the favor for last time when you helped me." I spoke with politeness, keeping a distant tone, trying to draw a clear line between us. Sophia stared at me, the light in her beautiful eyes slowly fading. After a long pause, she suddenly tugged at the corner of her lips, a cold, mocking smile spreading. "George, it seems you really want to distance yourself from me." Her voice was light, but it pierced straight into my heart like a needle. "Why? You don't like girls who are younger than you?" Before I could answer, her bright, playful face broke into a full, mischievous smile. I don't believe it. That word landed heavily, like a stone thrown into water. My heart skipped a beat. Chapter 10. At this point, even if I were dense, I should have realized Sophia's obvious intentions. She wanted to pursue me. I built up a high wall around my heart, shutting out all her eager attempts, and my voice carried no warmth. "We're not suited for each other. I can't be with someone so much younger than me." I paused, adding a sentence as if to put a final nail in the coffin of this rejection. "It would make me feel like I'm luring a minor." Her beautiful almond-shaped eyes never wavered as she stared at me, the fire in them only growing stronger. 8 years. What's the big deal? My mom's 10 years younger than my dad, and they've been happily married for 40 years. Her voice was clear and unwavering, full of determination. "George, if you're using age as an excuse to turn me down, I won't accept it." Her bold and straightforward declaration hit me like a stone, sending ripples through the still waters of my heart. I found myself momentarily speechless, but soon, the ripples faded. It was just a fleeting moment. Someone like her, pampered and well cared for, could get anything she wanted. The things that were out of reach only became more enticing. Once this novelty wore off, she would tire of it, and like tossing away an old toy, she'd turn away without a second thought. I told myself this, and so I didn't engage with her any further. But to my surprise, Sophia's enthusiasm wasn't a brief downpour but a long, drawn-out rainy season. She pursued me publicly for 6 months. Everyone in the bar knew about it. No one was unaware. Then one day, one of her friends stopped me outside the bar. The girl was grinning, full of gossip. "George, you're really breaking records. We've never seen Sophia chase someone for this long." She winked at me and lowered her voice. "The last guy, the so-called high mountain flower, she gave up after 3 months, saying he was too boring. So, go on. Don't listen to her. We all want to see just how long she'll keep this up." Even I hadn't expected her to persist for so long. For these 6 months, she had been like a gentle breeze, always circling around me, never crossing the line. That perfect sense of balance didn't make me feel the slightest bit annoyed. The wall I had built, the one called age, I didn't even realize when it started to crack under her persistence. Lost in thought, a wisp of smoke drifted into my nose. I looked up to see Sophia leaning against her eye-catching yellow sports car. A cigarette dangled from her fingers, the crimson ember flickering in the dusk. The smoke swirled around her, obscuring her bright and bold face, adding an air of mystery, making her seem harder to decipher. When she saw me, she paused for a moment, then extinguished the cigarette with her fingers, casually waving her hand in the air as if brushing away something unpleasant. When she looked back at me, the familiar, dazzling smile was back, almost blinding. "Off work?" Her voice was as clear as ever. "I'm taking you somewhere today." She tilted her chin toward the passenger seat, her eyes radiating unrestrained anticipation. I instinctively thought to shake my head. A voice inside me kept reminding me not to give her any hope. Cutting things off decisively was the kindest thing to do. And besides, I had somewhere more important to be tonight. I was about to speak, the words of refusal already on the tip of my tongue. "No, Before I could finish, she anticipated my refusal, speaking first, her voice softening. "Don't rush to turn me down. Just tonight. Will you stay with me?" Seeing my silence, she took a deep breath, her voice trembling with a hint of desperation. "Just tonight. It won't be too late. After tonight, I won't bother you anymore." That last word, she nearly begged. Her usually sparkling eyes now seemed veiled with a layer of mist, filled with careful pleading that pierced right into my heart. I hesitated, the rejection I had prepared to give caught in my throat, unable to move. By some strange twist, I heard myself ask, in a dry, unfamiliar voice, "Really?" The moment the words left my mouth, the light in her eyes flared back to life, like a long-waiting kitten finally seeing its owner return home. The gloom in her gaze cleared, and she nodded eagerly, her smile so bright it could melt an entire winter night. "Really?" Chapter 11. I regret it. The moment I sat in the sports car, I regretted it. My body was slammed down into the seat by a powerful force, as though my soul had been flung behind the car, desperately trying to catch up. In my ears was the symphony of the roaring sports car engine, mixed with her laugh, triumphant and flamboyant. That laugh scratched at my taut nerves, neither too heavy nor too light. I don't know how much time passed, maybe it was a century. So long it felt, but finally, the harsh engine noise came to a halt. The surroundings fell into complete silence. The sky had turned pitch black. With the cold light of the moon, I could finally see the scene outside the car. The towering iron gate, the tranquil path, the solemn tombstones. This place is a cemetery. A chill crawled up my spine. Inch by inch, the outline of the cemetery, the familiar silence, deeply triggered the most buried part of my memory. My voice came out dry, almost unrecognizable. "Sophia, why did you bring me here? What do you want?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned her back, rummaging around in the passenger seat. In the dark, a faint click sounded. A warm flame suddenly flickered to life. She turned around, holding a small piece of cake. The candlelight illuminated her face, outlining her bright, flamboyant features with an unprecedented softness. "Happy birthday, George." Her voice was light, like a feather brushing across my heart. "I hope you will always be happy." I froze completely, my blood seeming to freeze in that moment. But she didn't look at me. She walked straight toward a nearby tombstone, crouching carefully beside it. She placed the small cake down and gently leaned a bunch of white daisies, ones I hadn't noticed, against the stone. "Auntie, can you see me?" She spoke to the cold stone, her voice carrying a hint of soft, playful affection. "George is doing well. Don't worry, I'll always be with him." My gaze was fixed on the tombstone. The black and white photo on the stone was of a woman, smiling gently. My mother. It felt as though a ball of scalding cotton was lodged in my throat. Using every ounce of strength, I forced a few words out through clenched teeth. "How did you know? How did you know today is my birthday? And how did you know that today is also the anniversary of my mother's death?" "David told me." She turned back to look at me, her eyes brighter and warmer than the candlelight. A wave of intense sorrow swept over me, instantly crashing down all my defenses. My mother died in childbirth on the day I was born. Since then, my birthday has become a taboo in our family. a wound in my father's heart that could never heal. Every year on this day, I would come here alone, quietly, to talk to her. This was a secret just for me, one I could never speak aloud. The walls I had built around myself were effortlessly shattered by her in that moment. My eyes burned with heat, and the faint candlelight before me blurred into indistinctness. The flickering light swayed in my blurry vision. Like the last stubborn warmth in the wind, I could no longer stand. My steps unsteady, I walked toward my mother's tombstone and slowly squatted down beside Sophia. The cold stone radiated a chilling coldness, but the warmth she brought was real enough to burn. I forced a smile that was harder to bear than crying, my voice hoarse. Thank you. This year has been the best birthday I've ever had. After a pause, it was as if I remembered something. I turned to look at her, trying hard to make my tone sound more relaxed. By the way, I'm the same age as David. Why do you call him brother but not me? She seemed caught off guard by the question, paused for a moment, then blushed slightly. Her gaze shifted awkwardly as she scratched her head. That's different. I don't want you to be my brother. Her voice was very soft, but it was like a stone thrown into the lake of my heart, creating ripples that spread out one after another. I withdrew my gaze and looked at the small flickering flame. So, today, you want me to accompany you to the cemetery? That was just to get you here. She seemed worried that I might misunderstand, quickly explaining with a tone full of unsuppressed frustration. I just wanted to spend your birthday with you. It's hard to get you to agree to anything. Looking at her puffed up cheeks, the ice in my heart melted a little more. Suddenly, she seemed to remember something and eagerly pulled something out of her pocket, carefully handing it to me. It was a small turtle, woven from colorful string. Looking clumsily adorable, she knew I didn't like receiving expensive gifts, so she had made the little turtle herself. I couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. I reached out and took it, my fingertips feeling a little cold. Don't give me turtles anymore. My voice was light, as faint as a sigh. I don't like them. When I was a child, I was frail and often alone. A neighbor lady, worried that I might be lonely, gave my father a little turtle to keep me company, but my father didn't know how to care for it. After a month, that tiny life stiffened in front of me. My father yelled at me, saying that a turtle was such an easy creature to care for, but it didn't last under my watch. He cursed me for being useless, for being someone who brought misfortune. He said I was like my name, ethereal, non-existent, and so annoying. He forgot that this name was the last thing my mother gave me with her final breath. So every time someone mentions my name, it feels like a silent slap in the face, burning with pain. Sophia's eyes, which were always so bright, instantly filled with a deep, unshakable pity. I never expected her, someone who had grown up surrounded by love, to empathize with me. I just hadn't had anyone to talk to for so long, but in the next moment, a warm body suddenly hugged me tightly, with a force that seemed to piece together the broken fragments of my past. Her arms wrapped around my back as though she were trying to gently stitch me back together, piece by piece. She whispered into my ear, her tone incredibly serious, as if declaring a solemn truth. You are good, and your name is good. George, you deserve love, no matter when. With a sudden crash, the last thread of rationality in my mind snapped completely. So this is what it feels like to be chosen and cared for by someone. This warmth was enough to pull me out of the mire of my past. I raised the corners of my lips, and this time, it was a smile that came from the heart, free of any pretense. For the first time, I actively responded to this light that had barged into my life. Thank you. I looked into her eyes under the candlelight and whispered my wish. My wish is that we both get better in the future. Sophia, my wish is to have you with me. Chapter 12. On the way back, the night wind carried a faint sweetness, almost imperceptible, but Sophia wouldn't let go of my hand. Her fingers stubbornly tangled with mine. Let's take a picture, George. She raised her phone, not pointing it at our faces but at our tightly clasped hands, clearly pressing the shutter. In the photo, there were no faces, only the silent vow of our fingers entwined. She quickly posted it online, with a caption that was just one word: mine. Dominant. Just like her. Not long after, her phone rang. The voice on the other end was unrecognizable, but her tone was so excited it was almost unbearable. It worked. We finally did it. I thought it was just a little girl's excitement, sharing our budding romance with her friends, and didn't give it much thought. After all, it was the first time someone was loving me so fervently and steadfastly. David soon saw our official announcement from my WeChat post, and his message was full of teasing. Nice one, George. How's it feel to date a little sister? How did it feel? I raised my eyes and glanced at Sophia, who was curled up on the couch, hugging the cat. Clingy, too clingy. She seemed like she wanted to be attached to me 24/7, leaving her mark on all my things to claim ownership. This was completely different from Willow, two completely opposite extremes. When I was with Willow, it felt like we were two independent planets, orbiting smoothly on our own tracks. Occasionally, We would cross paths but never interfered with each other. But Sophia, she was the sun, demanding that I, the planet, must always revolve around her. Her possessiveness and desire for control were strong, almost obsessive, especially after she found out that Orange was a cat I raised with Willow. She looked at that fluffy little creature, her eyes always so bright, but there was a barely noticeable hostility in them. She even got jealous of the cat. Recently, she started pestering me for a Valentine's Day gift, not an expensive luxury item, but something handmade by me, to prove it was one of a kind and filled with love. I, who couldn't even get through a basic craft class, what could I possibly make? But seeing the expectant look in her eyes, I couldn't bring myself to say no. After thinking it through, I could only dive into a handmade silver jewelry shop after work, learning how to make her a necklace. The clumsy file in my hands was like an unruly beast, constantly resisting me at every turn. My phone was set up beside me, and in the video call, I could see Sophia's enlarged face, smiling cheerfully. She rested her chin on her hand, looking at the screen with great interest, watching me struggle with the cold tools, my face contorting with frustration. The joy in her eyes almost overflowed from the screen. It seemed like my clumsiness and awkwardness were exactly what she wanted to receive, the one-of-a-kind love letter. At that moment, an unfamiliar voice suddenly came through from her side. Look at you, smiling like that. Are you really serious about it? The teasing in the voice was sharp and abrasive, and I instinctively paused my movements. Looking up at the screen, in the video, Sophia's smile instantly vanished without a trace, replaced by a cold frown. It seemed like she muttered something angrily, and in the shaky frame, I caught a glimpse of an awkward figure hastily walking away. When the camera returned to her, she had forced a smile back on, but it was a little strained. Don't listen to her nonsense. She's just jealous that I have such a loving boyfriend. I just ed in response, nodding as I turned back to my work, battling the unshaped silver material. The surroundings fell quiet again, only the sound of the file scraping against the metal breaking the silence. After a while, I didn't hear her say anything else, but the almost searing gaze of hers never left me. I looked up and met her careful, almost inquisitive eyes. You aren't angry, right? Her voice was soft, as if afraid of disturbing something. I was a little confused. No, I'm not. Getting angry over a careless remark wasn't something I would do. Upon hearing my affirmative answer, Sophia seemed to finally release the tension she had been holding, letting out a long sigh. This necklace took me a whole month to finish. During that time, I tore it apart and fixed it again and again, remade it countless times, and finally, clumsily, I finished it. When I handed her the small box with the necklace inside, I felt an inexplicable nervousness in my heart. Sophia opened the box, lowering her gaze, staring at it for a long time, long enough that I thought maybe she didn't like it. Thank you, I really like it. She finally spoke, but her voice carried an indescribable heaviness, completely different from the excitement I had expected. My intuition told me that something was off, but I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I reached out and pinched her cold cheek, trying to dispel the strange atmosphere. Chapter 13. On my way home in the evening, I ran into someone I thought I would never see again. She was standing under the camphor tree, the one where we once fed stray cats together. She wore a striking red dress, standing there motionless. She gazed at me quietly, her eyes full of longing and reluctance. The smile on my face slowly froze, my fingers tightening as I unemotionally hung up Sophia's call. It was Willow. I remembered how, after I blocked all her contact details, she went crazy, calling me from different unknown numbers. Back then, she was still upset about our breakup, unable to let go of me or herself. On the phone, she had asked me, hysterical, to give her an explanation she could accept. Even if I die, you must let me die with clarity. She stubbornly believed that unless she understood the reason, her life would never be able to move past this. I thought it was ridiculous and laughable. She had forgotten so quickly. It was as if she wasn't the one who had been ambiguous with a male colleague, letting him into her home. Now, she was acting as though the world owed her, playing the victim. So, I told her, with utter seriousness and cruelty, word by word, you were testing me, testing my limits, testing how much I would tolerate for you. He was so obviously in love with you. You didn't reject him. You even let him into your home. Willow, we're not kids anymore. If you don't initiate, you still have to reject. Your lack of rejection was, to him, an open invitation. You can stay up all night taking care of him because he's drunk. Tomorrow, you'll let him into your bed. If I let this slide, how can you guarantee there won't be a next time? I'm just not giving you another chance to hurt me. What are you feeling wronged about? As for her suffocating family and the coldness she showed day after day, I didn't want to bring them up again, treating them as painful memories. There was a deathly silence on the other end of the line. In the end, I calmly sentenced our past to death. I don't make friends with exes. I had once said that a good ex should be like a ghost, completely gone from each other's world, never to disturb. That was the last period I placed on the end of our tragic past. Looking back, she obviously didn't understand. I turned and walked away without hesitation. How have you been lately? Willow's voice came from behind me, trembling ever so slightly. I didn't stop walking. It all felt absurd. In just a few months, she had lost so much weight. The striking red dress on her now made her frame look even more fragile. Her face was pale and worn, clearly showing that she wasn't doing well. I'm good. Don't worry about it. My voice was cold, wanting to escape this suffocating reunion as quickly as possible. But my sleeve was gently tugged by a force. She looked at me carefully. Her eyes, which once made me fall for her, now only showed humble curiosity. Are you with her now? I lowered my gaze, watching her fingers clutching my sleeve. Then, I looked up and met her eyes, where I could clearly see a glimmer of lingering affection. I quickly turned my head, as though that gaze had burned me. It's none of your business. Don't push me away like this. She softened her voice, as if trying to coax me. Even though we're apart, I still want you to be happy. Her tone suddenly shifted to a more aggressive questioning. But do you really know the person you're with now? My steps finally halted at her words. So, it wasn't about me. It was about Sophia. What do you mean? Willow didn't respond but just held up her phone, the screen glowing as it reflected the satisfied smile on her lips. This was just taken. The background of the photo was bizarre, with loud heavy metal music seeming to burst through the screen. It was a live house. In the center of the photo, the person swaying freely to the music, with a bright smile on her face, was Sophia. Just a few minutes ago, she had sweetly told me on the phone that she was writing a new song and was so tired she could barely lift her head. Willow was sure this photo would be the thorn that pierced my heart. She thought I would be thrown off by a lie. If she had just gone to a live house without telling me, that wouldn't have been a big deal. I'm not the kind of person who ties their partner down. But Willow's smug expression told me there was more to this than just a night out. I had to see it with my own eyes. I hailed a cab, and Willow's red sports car followed behind me, trailing slowly, persistent. When we reached the destination, I slammed the car door shut and turned to face her, leaning against the door of her car. I furrowed my brow, my voice as cold as ice. What are you doing here? She smiled, her red lips curling up, and said one word, watching. I clenched my jaw, furious. This woman always knew exactly how to hit my sore spots. A voice inside me coldly asked, Sophia, will you let her have her way? Chapter 14. Sophia proved it with actions. She would. Not only did she let Willow see the joke I had become, but she also trampled my dignity and self-respect underfoot, crushing them to pieces. As soon as I entered, the deafening music instantly engulfed me. In the bizarre lighting, I spotted her immediately. Sophia, the girl who was always obedient and sweet in front of me, was now laughing wildly, playfully, sitting on a man's lap. I looked at the guy. His face was so familiar. It hurt. It was the same guy who had blocked her in the bar. Her face was flushed, almost completely nestled in the guy's arms. I almost thought you were really charmed by that old man, the guy said, his tone full of smugness. The word old man made my heart stop for a beat. You're just using him to get back at me, right? To test my sincerity, right? Now you've won. So hurry up and break up with him, the guy said, gloating. Sophia let out a soft snort, her tone dripping with the pride of someone doing a favor. Well, you didn't care about me at first, so I had to find someone else to make you mad. But she changed the subject, taking a necklace off her neck and casually playing with it between her fingers. It was the necklace he had spent a month handcrafting and stringing together. He gave it to me on Valentine's Day. I just casually said I liked it, and he actually took it seriously. She laughed indifferently, as though telling a joke about someone else. That necklace, which held all my feelings for her, was nothing but a cheap trophy in her hands. A girl with smoky makeup nearby leaned in, envious, trying to reach for it. Sophia turned her body to block her, protecting it like it was something precious. Another girl, excited, asked, So, how long are you planning to play with this guy? Why don't you let me have a turn? I also want to try the older guy experience. The room burst into sharp, mocking laughter at the words. Every laugh felt like a loud slap to my face, stinging with pain. Behind me, Willow muttered a curse, her anger barely contained. She picked up an empty bottle from the corner, looking ready to charge at them. I grabbed her wrist with enough force to make her frown in discomfort. Don't do anything impulsive. My voice was unnervingly calm. Willow turned sharply to look at me, a mix of complex pain and anger flashing in her beautiful eyes, as if scolding me for not standing up for myself. Are you really just going to let them insult you like this? Before she could finish speaking, I let go of her and walked toward them. The mocking laughter came to an abrupt stop as soon as I appeared. Sophia's smug and flirtatious expression froze, replaced by complete panic and paleness. Go, George, what are you doing here? You have to let me explain. I didn't look at her frantic face. My gaze was solely focused on the necklace she was clutching in her hand. I didn't say a word. I reached out, taking the necklace from her trembling fingers. The cold touch seemed to cruelly mock the warmth I once gave her. Then, I grabbed a bottle of beer from the table. In the shocked gazes of everyone around, I poured the entire contents over her face, the one adorned with delicate makeup. The beer dripped down her hair in a messy, ungraceful cascade, splashing across her fake expression. My gaze was calm, like a stagnant pond, no ripples rising at all. There, now, even breaking up seemed like an unnecessary, redundant phrase. Saying we were never really together, that it was just a game, might be more fitting. The suppressed emotions burst out like a shaken bottle of soda, the moment the cap was twisted off, foam spilling over in a sticky, destructive sweetness. I looked at those eyes I once thought were filled with stars, with an intense disgust. In her terrified, pleading gaze, I heard myself curse her with venomous words, each one sharp and deliberate. It wasn't just a game, was it? Why the act of being wronged in front of me? Why can't I just play with you to death? Get out of here. Never show your face in front of me again. My attitude shattered whatever hope she had left. As soon as I finished speaking, the man who had been silent until now finally couldn't stay seated. He jumped up, his finger nearly poking my nose, his face full of disdain and contempt. How dare you speak like that? You really think you're some pure-hearted male lead, fishing for true love? Why don't you take a look in the mirror and see how old you are? Shut the fuck up, Sophia screamed at the man. Then, like grabbing at a lifeline, reached out to pull at my sleeve. Her hand never even touched me. Smack! A crisp, sharp slap echoed through the air, slapping back at her. Sophia's head snapped to the side from the impact, 5 clear finger marks immediately appearing on her face. She clutched her cheek, staring in disbelief at the person in front of her. Willow, she screamed like an ignited firecracker, her fury boiling over. Are you really still clinging to George? Like a fucking ghost? Willow flexed her wrist, her beautiful red lips curling into a cold, mocking smile. I'm here to teach you a lesson for him. You shameless woman. She took a step forward, looking down at Sophia from above, her presence radiating an intense energy. He's a man. It's not right for him to hit a woman, but I'm different. I'm a woman. If I want to hit you, I'll hit you however I like. This sentence completely triggered Sophia. Her eyes, now red, became wild as she lunged at Willow, both of them tearing at each other's hair, instantly becoming a chaotic mess. Screams, curses, the sound of a broken bottle hitting the ground. My mind was in turmoil, buzzing like a boiling pot of porridge. For a moment, I had only one thought. Let it all burn. Let everything just get the hell out of my world. However, in the final moment when that last string of reason was about to snap, I held onto it with all my strength. I knew better than anyone that these two, one from the Liu family, and the other seemingly from a decent background, if things went too far, there would be plenty of people to clean up the mess. The only one who'd suffer would be me, the old man with nothing to my name. Willow. My voice was low, but it cut through the chaos like a cold blade. Let's go. Willow, who had been pinning Sophia down, paused when she heard my voice. Without hesitation, she released her grip, stepping back and swiftly returning to my side. Sophia, now a mess, slumped to the ground, her hair in disarray, her makeup ruined. She glared at me with such intensity, as though she wanted to carve pieces of flesh out of me with her eyes. I didn't give her even a glance. I turned, decisively leaving. Chapter 15. The night had deepened. In the apartment, only the smell of disinfectant lingered, sharp and cold. I lowered my eyes, carefully wiping the cut on Willow's lip with a cotton swab, dipping it in antiseptic solution. She was very quiet, not once wincing in pain. In just a few short hours, my life had been fast-forwarded, and another farce ended in a hurried collapse. Once again, an uncomplicated breakup. The moment I stepped out of the bar, I expressionlessly pulled out my phone. I found that familiar contact, deleted it, and blocked it all in one swift motion. I even sadly realized that I had become so proficient at quickly and thoroughly cutting off an emotion that it was almost painful. Halfway through cleaning the wound, the silence in the air was carefully broken by her. I've completely cut ties with Makoto. I swear, nothing like what happened before will ever happen again. As I was putting the cotton swab away, her hot fingers suddenly gripped my hand. Can we? I stiffened all over, as if something dirty had touched me, yanking my hand back violently. The movement was fast, with no lingering attachment. No. My voice held no warmth, coldly rejecting Willow's plea for reconciliation. I knew it. Willow seemed to have expected this answer, letting out a long sigh, as if she had unloaded some heavy burden. She looked at me, her eyes filled with complexity. Your heart is made of ice. You can let go of 3 years of love just like that. You've only been with that woman for a few months. You'll get over it quickly. Her tone even carried a hint of strange encouragement. You have to hold on. Don't go soft. Don't get back together with her. I lifted my eyelids, not wanting to say more, giving her a tired, dismissive glance. I don't need you to teach me. Indeed, Failed relationships are never worth revisiting, and those who have betrayed me will never deserve forgiveness. I told David everything in detail. On the other end of the line, there was a long silence. After the silence, came a disappointed sigh. Damn, man, I've known you for so many years. How did I never realize you've got a knack for attracting trash? No wonder Sophia was acting like a lunatic yesterday, calling around, asking where you were. He paused before asking the same soul-searching question I had. With her love for drama, why doesn't she just go off and destroy herself? I didn't reply. All the curse words I could think of had already been used when I poured that bottle of beer on her. What was left was just endless exhaustion and disgust. Sophia, of course, couldn't reach me. She chose the most foolish and direct method, waiting for me downstairs at my building. The bruises on her face hadn't faded, and combined with her pale, pitiful face, she looked both pathetic and repulsive. The moment she saw me, her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but she swallowed it back down. Her eyes seemed to be asking for an explanation, but also fearing that I would tell her to leave. I couldn't be bothered to listen to any more nonsense, so I spoke first. Don't come back. My voice was calm, but it made her body tremble uncontrollably. Getting rid of everything here again would be troublesome. I don't want to move to another place. These few words, I said them with the utmost frustration. Her face turned paler inch by inch. I looked at her, my gaze cold as I reminded her. I haven't been here long. You should know what I mean by that, right? Either you disappear, or I disappear, and I no longer want to waste my life on people who don't matter. The air was dead silent for a long time, long enough that I thought she would, like last time, cry, throw a tantrum, or go mad, but she didn't. She just looked up, her eyes red, tears welling up in them. Her voice broke with a sob. You won't forgive me, will you? I looked into those eyes that once made my heart skip a beat. Now, all I felt was sheer mockery. You already know the answer. Why bother asking me? I admit. At first, I got close to you just to get back at him, she said, her voice trembling, tears falling in heavy drops. But all this time, I really liked you, whether you believe it or not. The things I've done for you weren't fake. What they said was just a joke. Can't you forgive me? By the end, her voice even cracked with a crying tone, as if she were wrong beyond measure. You liked me too, right? Why couldn't you give me a little leeway? Ha! I was almost laughing in disbelief at her distorted sense of reality. She played with emotions like a game, and now, she was the one playing the victim. She thought that because I liked her, she could act entitled, thinking that no matter what she did, I would unconditionally tolerate it. So what? I asked her lightly, my voice so cold it could freeze. So, you think that because you owe me nothing, you can treat me like a toy? You think you can turn me into a joke, a conversation piece at your drinking parties? Is that it? From the start, your intentions were fake. Now, how can I believe a single word you say? I called her full name, each word slow and deliberate, as though I wanted to strip this name from my memory completely. Sophia, the biggest regret I have right now is that day at the bar. I gave you my WeChat because I was afraid you'd be upset. I took a step forward, leaning close to her terrified face, and whispered in her ear, just loud enough for us two to hear. Tell me, wouldn't it have been better if we had never met? Her body stiffened suddenly. I watched as the color drained from her lips and added the final blow. I shouldn't have softened my heart that day. After this, Sophia Kim truly disappeared from my world. Life returned to its quiet rhythm, but unexpectedly, work brought a promotion. I took on a new project, with the client being the famous Kim Group from City A. What was even stranger was that they specifically requested me to handle this project. I had my doubts, so I asked around and soon learned about Mr. Kim's background. He had only one daughter, raised like a precious gem in the palm of his hand. In fact, because his daughter loved rock music, he had spent a fortune opening a bar for her, naming it Nightfall. I had to admit, when it came to making up, Sophia's efforts were far more effective than Willow's endless apologies. I stared at the bank notification on my phone, a reminder that my salary had been credited. The numbers suddenly increasing in front of me, both dazzling and enticing. I couldn't suppress the smile that tugged at my lips, a smile that could neither be called sarcastic nor satisfied. If things ended with a full pocket like this, I'd be willing to go through a few more relationships like this. After all, as long as your heart is strong and you can let go, life has no obstacle you can't overcome. Chapter 16, Sophia, Extra. The first time I paid attention to George was at the insistence of my friend. The lights flickered hypnotically, dizzying my vision, and the deafening music thudded in my ears. My friend nudged me and, pointing toward a corner of the bar, whispered, Sophia, look over there. You wanted to find a guy to make Martin jealous, right? That one over there seems like a good option. I followed the direction of her finger, and there he was. In a corner, sitting at a table, was a man. He wore a simple white shirt, but it was impeccably clean. His face was soft and reserved, but his eyes were cold as ice, a clear line of separation between him and the bustling world around him. My friend kept egging me on. The ones who seem so calm and detached are the ones who play the best games. Her words intrigued me so much that a mixture of alcohol and my own desire for victory overtook me. So, with my guitar in tow, I headed towards him. He didn't reject me, which was expected. After all, since I was a little girl, no man had ever been able to reject me, Sophia. But what I didn't expect was that when I confessed that I only wanted to use him to make someone jealous, the famous rejection would come up in the conversation so quickly. I stood there, stunned, feeling for the first time the bitter taste of direct rejection. Well, look at that. Everything seemed so soft, but inside, it seemed to have thorns. Later, when my friend brought up that absurd idea again, I wasn't as enthusiastic. However, I ran into George once more. At that moment, my pride and desire for conquest took control again. I turned to my friends and, with a confident smile, said, "If we're going to do this, let's do it big. He's the one. I bet that in 6 months, I'll have him at my feet." That was how the casual encounter outside the bar happened. I saved him from an awkward situation, and every word I said had a hook. It wasn't hard to understand what I wanted, but I quickly realized I had made a mistake. George wasn't hard to conquer. It's just that he simply didn't give me the chance to do so. My enthusiasm crashed against him like a stone thrown into water, leaving not even a ripple of response. My friends advised me to let it go, that there were many other men in the world, but I didn't. I couldn't even explain why to myself. He wasn't my type, and he treated me with utter indifference. But still, I became obsessed, wishing his gaze would linger on me, just a little more, until one day, I finally understood. George had an almost unhealthy obsession with the purity of his feelings, and from the beginning, I had tainted his world of white and pure with a lie, leaving a stain that I couldn't erase. Just when I was about to lose hope, an unexpected visit arrived in my life. It was Willow, George's ex-girlfriend, that annoying woman. She looked at me with an expression full of lewdness, enjoying my discomfort. "Be careful, don't play with fire. George has an obsession with emotional purity, and if he finds out the truth, he will never forgive you." Her voice was soft and slow, like poisoned honey. A chill ran through my body, and a rage fueled by the offense began to burn inside me. I forced a smile, drawing the most ironic grin I could manage. "So, did he reject you because you're dirty?" My words, as I expected, hit her weak spot. Willow's face immediately darkened, but she quickly recovered and flashed her typical triumphant smile. "No, I'm not dirty. When we were together, everything was clean and pure. We had a time of happiness that no one could break." She stepped closer to me, her gaze overflowing with pride. "Even though we ended, I was the one who had him. I was the one who possessed him. And you, Sophia, not for a second were you the owner of his heart. Better pray that your life fools him for the rest of his life, because when he leaves you, he won't even bother to look at you." Each word from Willow was an uncomfortable truth I didn't want to admit. Frustration grew inside me like wild weeds. Uncontrolled, I decided I would try once more, just once. If this time he rejected me, I would completely give up and never pursue him again. But it was this last time, just this time, that George accepted. At that moment, a wave of immense joy flooded over me. But soon, despair reached me. My heart tightened as if caught by an invisible hand, torn between heaven and hell. Willow's words echoed in my mind like a spell. To deceive him forever. I had to deceive him forever. That elaborate lie would eventually come to an end. When George saw me sitting on Martin's lap, laughing with my friends, and heard that absurd joke, my world collapsed immediately. Panic flooded my chest, and my blood froze in an instant. At that moment, I couldn't distinguish whether what I felt for him was just a desire for conquest or if, truly, I already loved him deeply. All I knew was that I couldn't lose him. I wanted to tell him that at first it was a lie, but that the feelings had become real. I wanted to tell him that Martin was already part of the past, that it was just a game, that I really just wanted to be with him. But I opened my mouth, and no words came out. I had seen George's determination before. In his world so pure, there was no room for even a speck of dust. Opportunities are always unique. Once lost, there is no second chance. Those eyes that once drowned me in tenderness were now cold, devoid of even a hint of softness. Only a clear, frozen contempt remained. His gaze, like a sharp dagger, pierced through me. I knew at that moment that everything between us had ended. From that day on, for many years, the name George became a thorn lodged in my heart. I couldn't remove it, and with every attempt to touch it, the wound bled incessantly.